Good morning and welcome to this podcast on building back circular from COVID-19. Looking forward to a really insightful conversation today with Alexandre Lemille. First of all, to set some context, as we record this, it is early October 2020, with COVID-19 still raging across the world and Europe facing into a second wave of the virus and a very uncertain winter ahead. During the UN General Assembly week back in September, Business in the Community launched Time to Fix Up, our to-do list for businesses to build back responsibly. Based on conversations with 75 major businesses and over 100 business leaders, we have defined the 8 key opportunities for businesses to build back responsibly from the impacts of the pandemic. Today, we're going to explore the business case for building back circular, embracing the circular economy as part of a blueprint for a cost-efficient, resilient and low-carbon recovery. To guide us through some of the opportunities, I'm delighted to be joined by Alexandre Lemille, Director General at Anthesis France, who joins us via Business in the Community's Circular Economy Task Force. Alexandre has been involved in the circular economy movement since its inception back in 2010. He's been advocating for a circular economy with social inclusivity at its core, what he calls the circular human sphere. In 2016, he was recognized by the World Economic Forum for his leadership on the topic. Alex now leads the Anthesis Group in France and lectures on circular economy in several universities. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, good morning, Peter. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
We're now kind of over 6 months into the COVID-19 crisis and all that has brought with it. What are the key trends that you've seen that you think are going to stay with us and stick for the years to come?
Well, when it comes to the circular economy, to ecology overall, these are positive trends because the topic starts to become serious. It's not there yet, but we are starting to see lots of debates in schools, on television, and even within the businesses where the environment is now seen as an opportunity, as a business opportunity for companies. So somehow it's good news. One thing I have noticed as well is that COVID has shown executives that it's possible to dramatically change things. I mean, we have locked down half of the population of the world overnight. Obviously, this was done because there was no other choice, but it showed that people can embrace change faster than any government or even businesses could have think about it before. So obviously, living with terrorism and pandemic has changed our societies, and this will last for a long time. But what you need to understand is that both are linked to our consumption patterns and to climate change. And we need businesses, we need government, we need citizens to do something about it and to find solutions.
Absolutely, and yeah, I mean, it was right at the start of the pandemic, seeing the very direct link between habitat destruction
Yeah.
in various parts of the world and the intersection of our communities with these new zoonotic diseases is definitely it's been brought into very sort of stark reality, I think, for a lot of people in a way that it never has before. What would you say over the last 6 months or so you've been most surprised by? What's been the thing that's really kind of raised an eyebrow for you?
Well, I forgot to mention at the beginning that I have always been very involved in the African continent and African businesses through my past work experience. So during the COVID lockdown, I couldn't help but compare the stark contrast between the situation in Europe, where it was a bit disorganized all over, and the very smooth and quiet approach of the African countries, for example, where as they are used to this kind of health crisis. the thing is that we've been relying on just in time for everything, even health. This has revealed that the weaknesses of our nations, our countries, when it comes to risk management, whereas we thought we were ready for such a risk. But the obsession that we have with efficiency has put enormous pressure on supply chains. And I think we've mistakenly thought that health patients could be customers too. So we forgot that we were once effective, living within the Earth's carrying capacity. And for instance, eating seasonal food only, we forgot that, and we need to get back to this kind of trends and traditions.
In terms of the circular economy trend specifically, are there any particular circular related trends you've seen during the crisis that have emerged?
Well, again, positive one, because I hear more and more, obviously, about preserving people's health through circular economy solutions and innovation. But overall, the social dimension, which is the topic that I've been pushing these years, is increasingly included into debates, and which is again good news. As I have stressed time and time again, we must not forget that the circular economy aims to design negative externalities, so problematic like waste and solution, but not only. It needs to design all negative externalities, not only as user of services or as consumer of goods, but also for the people, because the people, the citizens, and what we call customers within the business framework, they expect you, the companies, you, the government, to protect their values, i.e., trusting the food they eat, the quality of the service you provide, or the machine you buy, without to worry about their health or the trust they put in you, or about being let down in case of limited after sales coverage. So the thing is that after all those years of a throwaway culture, we doubt about everything, me included. I give you an example about preserving the value of people, and that shows that it could work. I mean, in northern France, the city of Roubaix have been involved in this project. They have had a bottom-up approach, i.e., they equipped households and the citizens with um, as if they were the ones successful to achieve living a life at zero waste. So they provided weight, and they provided garden equipment for their balconies, as well as shared gardens for growing foods. And it worked. The trust is being built back while the citizens are getting out of financial trouble. I mean, Roubaix is one of the poorest cities in France. And through the zero waste, they've managed to rebuild the trust between the citizens and the city and the wider actors. And that is what circular economy needs to achieve: rebuild trust. This is really critical. Without trust, you cannot do anything.
It's a really, really interesting observation, and I think for a lot of us, our kind of initial perception when we hear the circular economy is all to do with materials and products and waste and packaging and that sort of thing. I think, when you start bringing those human values into the equation, actually it really does open up a whole another level of opportunities through the circular economy. And we've had some conversations through our national business response network, which is a platform we set up very quickly to connect offers of business support with communities in need. And it's actually, through time, we've realized it is inherently quite a circular thing in and of itself. But a lot of those businesses have reported exactly what you're saying, a big kind of impact in trust, a big impact on employee engagement and the perception of future talent coming to work for those organizations. So there's far further ranging values that come from this circular mindset. Perhaps we don't always look to immediately.
Yeah, it shouldn't be just this mechanical approach or technical approach to things like how am I going to design out waste or pollution. It's just about okay, can I measure my success from the results, from the outcome, and do a backcasting exercise as to this is where we want to be and how do I go about it? And this is to be the best way, without just saying waste or pollution. This is an overarching framework. This is a new economic model, and we need to sort out challenging problems and major climatic challenge. And you cannot do this alone. Yeah.
Just thinking about any businesses that you've seen kind of using the circular economy to their advantage in the last few months. Are there any examples or any ideas that you've seen emerge through the business sector adopting circular economy to their advantage?
Sure, there are several ones. Obviously, given the nature of my business, it's difficult to share names, but I can tell you that we are working with cities to measure in the measurement of the negative or positive impact of their circular programs. We are working with IT companies, for instance, many of them in the life cycle management of their databases and steel management. How circular can it be? And we are working as well with chemical companies. This is a difficult topic, especially for me, but we are working with these chemical companies towards more circularity and collaboration. So this is, in a nutshell, some good news here. One name I can share because it was done previously to my work with Anthesis Group through my own consultancy is the African Development Bank, which is this international organization covering the African continent, where we work together to design the circular economy support program for the continent, helping government and businesses. It was about the incubation of businesses, as well as passing laws for African government to embrace the circular economy. So things are moving the same way as we see in Europe, and again, this is great to see that happening. So.
From a kind of an institutional perspective, where have you seen some of the biggest or the most productive conversations taking place within Europe or the UK over the last few months, thinking about the kind of the interface between business and the institutions that help to accelerate the circular economy?
Well, obviously, the European Union, the cities as well, the Amsterdam, London, Paris, to name a few, are very active in the circular economy. The region between northern France, Belgium, and the Netherlands are also leading the way in that space. Obviously, Finland, the government of Finland, I work with them at times, and Citra, which is financing a lot of programs across the globe. They are also organizing the World Circular Economy Forum. LWARB in London, VRAP in London, ADEME in France. So all of these are very dynamic institutions trying to link public and private entities together in some ways with new partnerships, so that to say, okay, this is the major challenge that we have in front of us in terms of waste or in terms of pollution or you name it. How can you help? And I can think as well of the plastic pack, which is also a very interesting way of saying we have a plastic issues, be it in the ocean, be it within our landfill or our consumption patterns. How can you, as actors of governmental and non-governmental organization, can help? And we sit around the table and we start addressing problems at systemic level, and this is the right way to do it. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, great to see some of the progress coming out from the Plastics Pact. And actually, this last week, one of our circular economy task force members, Boots in the UK, have just launched a collection service in store to both kind of engage customers, but also to try and claw back some of the very hard to recycle packaging for cosmetics. So that's something that's just been launched very positively coming out of the pact over the last couple of weeks. So a shout out to Boots there. What would be your elevator pitch to business leaders considering the circular economy as something that might be a strategic part of their plans to build back responsibly?
Well, throughout history, I mean, it has always been in times of scarcity that we've proven to be the most innovative as communities. Obviously, we have in mind wars, but this is kind of war on plastic and war on waste and pollution that we have in front of us. So it's kind of the same thing, you know. And all indicators show that this is in the preservation of the value of resources, that away from pollution, that this is the safest direction that we can take, not only as citizens, as government, but as business leaders. There is barely other alternative to that. So not only the circular economy brings an answer to increasing supply chain resilience against resource scarcity, but it is also seen as a solution to address up to 40% of the climate change related impact, according to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation latest report. So it really brings answers, and it really changed the paradigm of companies. So that's really the route to go. I mean, again, this is my view. But the sooner you invest in the principles of circular economy, the faster you will learn about resilience. It's a matter of experiencing it, testing your supply chain, testing your products against those business models. And the more you test and the more you learn, the more you will be absorbing future shocks through and thanks to the diversity of your offer, while offering alternative solutions to reduce those shocks that have become your shock. I mean, we're talking about climatic shocks. We're talking about shocks within communities and societies, and they have become businesses once as well. So, for instance, I give you an example. Tomorrow, a brewery will not just brew beers anymore. It's not going to be anymore this siloed approach that we have in linear economy. Sorry, whereby you produce one type of product, and you define your market shares, and you sell that product into the targeted market, and you expect growth to happen all the time. So it's no longer that. It's you will be a brewery, but among other things, among selling beers, you will also grow food, produce gas, grow algae, or have a fish culture. Why all of that? Because all of these activities are interconnected through diverse flows, because it's no longer the waste that you see, but the resources of one activity, be it coming from the brewery or coming from the algae basin, or the methanization that you will generate gas from. All these flows become the resource for the next activity to occur, and that will increase your resilience, because if something happened to your brewery business, then you still can grow fish or can do algae as an alternative to plastics, and so on and so forth. So you are very much stronger towards future shocks. And that's very much the mimicking of natural ecosystem that we are recreating through circular economy. And this is what business leaders need to learn from. And you can only learn about that through experience as well.
It's really, really fascinating. I mean, so many more questions I could ask just on that one example. We've seen in the UK toast brewery or toast beer that are using waste bread to brew, very delicious beer. That's a very basic model, but just that alone, the lower cost base that model allows toast to work around, the fact that they're supporting, tackling food waste from another sector, lower embodied carbon within the beers as well. They're not kind of double counting the need for land elsewhere through growing the wheat and so on that they would otherwise be using. So the ripple effect, I think, of just taking small steps as you start to go on the sort of journey you've just talked about can be huge. And I think we've really heard from businesses over the last few months that they're waking up to the realization that the circular economy offers that resilience piece that you've just talked about, both in terms of the diversity of revenue streams that you can foster or create through your value chain. Also, the supply chain resilience, and we've had amazing examples of when there was a shortage of respirators at the start of lockdown in the US. Actually, it was the refurbished or remanufactured respirator sector that was able to fill that gap. So that was, again, a circular principle kind of building resilience in the health sector.
The minute you move from that me economy, the individualistic economy, focusing on me and my wealth model, into that we economy, whereby I am an element of a bigger piece of a puzzle, the minute I see the perspective, the ecosystem perspective, and all these opportunities as flows and stock, then you see a diversity of opportunity, and these are only good news, because it's about reducing your operational cost and increasing your opportunities for collaboration.
All the while, and probably not exclusively, but generally you will also be reducing your carbon impact along the way as well. So yeah, definitely. It really is a kind of a holy trinity of benefit there. So yeah, really great to be sort of breaking the conversation out in this context. So one thing we have heard alongside some of those kind of the real positives that we've just talked about is certain business leaders kind of pushing back on circular initiatives on the basis of cost and potential kind of capital outlay, and the fact that we're, and we can't escape the fact that COVID has had such a dramatic impact on our existing economy, and that capital is scarce for a lot of businesses. How would you, at the same time, we need all to invest to sort of spur and ignite our recoveries. So do you feel that is the tension between circular opportunities and capital constraints justified? And if so, how can we overcome it?
Well, to me, the definition of leaders are those people who find ways out of complex situations, right? That's my definition of leadership. But as always, I mean, when market trends change, new investments are needed. So that's definitely obvious. But in a post-financial crisis, in a post-environmental crisis, and in a post-health crisis world, tensions are justified, so there's no denial here. But yet we need leaders to find the remedies. There's no other choices, and we don't have to have them dig deeper into the intricacies of circular economy to start doing things right. We are not asking businesses to be fully circular like yesterday. We ask them to start three things. I mean, identify products that last longer, so that you can test them throughout these new business models that rely on long-lasting products. Secondly, we asked you as leader to assess your material inventories within your factories and shops, and try to do more with less. How can you do more with less tomorrow? And this is only good news for you as a business in terms of cost, and as well as a third approach to innovate more by designing out these negative externalities. I mean, how can I reduce that level of waste and that level of pollution first within my factories and shops, and then when the consumers and the users are using my goods and services. And as well, I wanted to highlight the fact that cost should be shared in a collaborative fashion. I mean, I know that this is easier said than done, but for instance, I tell you a personal example. I mean, I work every month in a bio cooperative as volunteer for a few hours per month. I mean, you sign a contract and you are part of this cooperative, and you are helping in the shelves and managing the food and vegetables when customers are around in the shop. And in exchange, I have access to that bio food and items at reasonable prices. I mean, it's not like too expensive to buy there. But I also contribute myself, because I buy the containers that I need to refill with olive oil and shower gel and soap. So since I'm volunteering and since I agree to be part of that cooperative for its success, I mean, obviously the costs are shared and lowered. And since I all these containers, they don't need to buy those containers anymore because I am the one to buy them. So in the new economy, in the new paradigm, we agree to share cost in different ways so that it works for all. But collaboration is key, and you need to engage your customers. So on top of as a customer or volunteers, they also understand one thing is that they know me well. I'm part of their business model. I'm part of their cooperative model, and they know I will come back. So it's a much safer approach of the future. I mean, the future and the uncertainties of the future are lessened because they know I'm part of their business model. So to achieve this, you have to reinvent the way you do business, and that's what leaders do, from what I understand, right?
We hope so, yeah. And I think now, like if they're going to now is certainly the time to be having conversations or to be having ideas that break us out of the ways of working or the cognitive lock-in that has led us to be wedded to certain ways of doing business. And how do you turn an incumbent retailer, for example, to kind of extend the model that you've just outlined, which is again a sort of a great example of that from me to we mentality. But as an incumbent retailer, we've seen examples of businesses trialing setups where for example, you offer tokens or credits in store for customers that bring back goods or
Yeah.
items to be recycled or to be refurbished and resold, because the business is able to sell those multiple times and retain the value, but also it generates a sticky customer. It's someone who's going to keep coming back and will generate more loyalty. So it's a fairly simple thing to test or trial, but you wonder sometimes when you hear these things why it's taken so long to get to this point, because it seems so simple now.
Well, it's a matter in a throughput economy. You want to maximize the value, which is often just the wealth, to yourself. In a circular mindset, it's more about, okay, how do I ensure future risks are being lowered, and how do I make sure if that customer comes back for the next 5 years to my shop, then I have lesser of risk. I can lower the future risk, and this is the whole point here. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to further, and I'm conscious that not all the businesses we'll be sort of speaking to or listening to this podcast will necessarily be kind of selling goods and products. So just thinking about I was having a conversation earlier this week with a leasing company who provide IT leasing, and they were talking about, I think it's somewhere around 90% of businesses still insist on buying and owning the IT that they use. And this leasing organization has found a way of delivering IT as a service effectively to businesses that sits off balance sheet. It's not a risk to them. They continually update and renew the IT hardware so that they have the latest models. But a lot of it is refurbished or remanufactured. You wouldn't know as a user, but the cost, therefore, to the business is significantly less than it would be to own those assets. And at a time where we're all kind of looking to ways to preserve capital to invest in employees or innovation, actually you can save costs by procuring in a much more circular way as well. You've touched on it a little bit at the start of the conversation, but the role of kind of circularity in really building resilience, we've heard this become, and I don't want to say it's a buzzword, but it's definitely become a much sort of more front and center part of the boardroom conversation. Can you talk a little bit more about the role of circularity in building more resilient businesses?
Sure. This is what I call the circular thinking, or how we see things, everything being interconnected. For instance, and the strategy to apply, like the less energy and the less resources that you use, the better. But it's not about a deal between lesser quality and better margin. No, it's just going with alternative alternative solution that use less energy and less resources. It's about reducing your operational cost by working together, and this could lead you to identify underutilized resources. Like I give you an example for hypermarkets. I mean, all their parking lots are empty at night. I mean, can they rent them out, or can they do something with that underutilized resources? And that could be shared with these resources could be shared also with nearby factories or stores, and vice versa. So it's a win-win situation, and that keeps you away from creating waste and pollution. The circular thinking also says that things should be returnable. Obviously, that's the definition of circularity, but that is and it's in the smaller loop where you create more benefit for you as a company. I mean, obviously for the customer as well. So the faster you manage to get your product back to the service centers, the faster you can fix it, and before it goes out again to either the same customer or new ones. So I mean, just ask yourself this question. I mean, how can I ensure that my product will come back to me in acceptable conditions for maintenance or restarting, preparing it for resale at minimum cost to me? It makes sense. I mean, it's obviously the good old economy of sense. I mean, I'm sure if you do that, you will start innovate and offer a unique solution. And remember that an economy of services, moving away from an economy of products, leads to the uniqueness of your offer. Just think about this brewery, the earlier example that I gave. I mean, this is unique. I mean, you cannot find. You will not be facing your next competitor because you don't sell a beer against another beer. You sell a concept. You sell an ecosystem of services that are interlinked between one another. And if your beers are no longer successful in your market, you still have alternative byproducts to offer. And the more you collaborate by involving partners this way, or be part of other solutions, the more your organization will be resilient, anchored in an extended network of players. So that's the way to go.
Absolutely, and there's a really interesting point in there. You talk about the kind of the closeness of the loop, or the smaller loops that we can try and identify, and I guess that kind of leads me slightly onto the next question, which is thinking about the kind of some of the impacts that the pandemic has had around inequality, and obviously the job losses that we're seeing now starting to really accelerate and reach record levels. Within all of this, there is a big question mark around globalization as well, and the sort of the scale of our supply chains and our dependency on communities on different sides of the world. What sort of opportunities does circularity present to address some of that imbalance within our societies and within the kind of the economic outcomes for people of our existing setup? Where can circularity play a role to soften the blow for communities?
Well, it's a complex topic, and but that's why I'm also somehow fighting against recycling. Not that just I'm against recycling. It's not the point. So we need recycling for many decades to go, but recycling, according to the circular economy definition, is that once I create waste, I need to sort out that waste and upcycle somehow the waste that has been created. And this is wrong. This is still very linear in terms of thinking. The same goes with inequality. You create as much waste as you can for yourself, and then you give away some of your wealth to poor people or to humanitarian actions. This is wrong. This is very linear. So that's why I'm saying you need to design all externalities out. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed because everything is interlinked. And to come back to your question, it's a matter of give and take. I mean, this is your famous economic trickle down of benefits and opportunities, but for real this time, not in the fantasies of past economic models. Let me use an example so that it talks to people. I mean, in the smartphone industry, I mean, on one side you have the example of Apple, where smartphones are distributed in stores under Apple license. The phones can often be opened and repaired, but only and mainly by Apple authorized services. And once your phone is no longer repairable, it is sent back in factories, be it in the US or China, for the phone to be taken apart by a robot with the parts collected for future use. So there's nothing wrong with that. This is a closed loop circular model. It's circular. It's done to preserve value, but the value is kept within the same one in the hands of the one company.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not very equitable. On the other hand, you have this open source, open loop model like the Fairphone, where everything can be unscrewed so that the parts are made available to anyone to fix the phone. Or better still, you can upgrade it anytime. So just imagine, I mean, just picture it. You send millions of Fairphones units to your country, the UK or any other country. And even better, countries where they are running out of underground resources. And you send those millions of units by granting access to rare earth metals and all kinds of metals that could become a great way to source metals and minerals as part of what we call the urban mining strategy. And you might even think around these lines in national strategies to redesign electronics from legacy devices in the UK into made in the UK again. And but now imagine we are not just talking about smartphone, but any electronics. Imagine the kind of opportunity it represents for employment through remanufacturing, remaking things as new for a country like the UK, for any countries in Europe which have been disindustrialized, or for new countries like in Africa where they need to build a remanufacturing network, not factoring network like China has done and Europe has done in the past, but a new kind of remanufacture that takes legacy devices and turn them into brand new ones. On top, you have those phones that are open for repair, and they lead to countless job creation locally, from repair shops to local designers to fab lab innovations, to the uniqueness of the upgraded phone. I mean, you have now a unique phone, not being compared to anyone else next door. So modularity, product maintenance, flexible design, you name it, remanufacturing lead to the creation of countless jobs. And this is what our nations need to understand, that a service-based economy creates jobs. This is mainly about what you want to see entering into your market and whether or not these goods will lead to the dynamism of the local job market. So it's a decision that needs to be made by governments together with the businesses. Open loop, open source circular economy, to address your point on inequality and the lack of job creation.
Again, just to kind of call out one of our circular economy task force members, Crown Workspace, who are an office sort of equipment and office relocation specialist. But they have moved towards a model where they sell a lot of remanufactured furniture, and since creating their repair center, I think they now employ 15 or so people to do those repairs and remanufacture furniture to sell on at lower cost to other businesses. And it's a simple model, but it drives down costs for procurers and for people investing in new office spaces. It's created sustainable employment for 15 individuals, and it's helped them to grow their business. So it's a very simple example, but they've managed it really effectively. So again, just thinking about, is it creating jobs within our own business, or is it investing in places that will lead to kind of more equitable outcomes for your supply chain?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, this is a topic dear to my heart, but once again, you cannot split circularity from equality. I mean, equity. You need to embed both together. It not only makes business sense, but it also creates opportunities for the people within any market.
Absolutely, and it's sort of, I guess it's a lot of this is about mindset shift, isn't it? And it's like I say, it's breaking out of our existing paradigm, and I think
Yeah.
this is where we're trying as much as possible to share examples and those kind of templates, if you like, for people to pick up and apply within their own organizations. So on that topic, and just thinking about how we move from some of the theory towards action and helping people to apply this here and now, what would you say are the kind of the main quick wins that you'd encourage any business to embrace right now as they start planning their recoveries?
Well, my view is that, I mean, some quick wins could be found in reducing your operational costs first, as we mentioned earlier, and testing the design of specific product line that can last longer. This is where the opportunity in circular economy is. I mean, in terms of operational cost, it's about making product with fewer materials, reducing waste at all stages of your supply chain, and avoiding throwing away products that are still in working order, and you could possibly develop new channels to resell them. So, and in the redesign of the product, I mean, it's a very essential it's a very essential opportunity here, because redesign represents approximately 80% of the net positive future impact of circular economy. So it is really key. This is why moving us away from a recycling-based economy, I mean, which is not even successful as we speak. So that's why we need to focus our effort in the redesign. And it's a question of picking and choosing your range of product that could be piloted as leased or used as a service for a while. And while you test your product being leased as a service, you will prepare yourself for how can your product be redesigned. It's a bit like the experience that Bundle with Miele, that washing machine manufacturer has had. I mean, thanks to Bundle, a small startup from the Netherlands, they have managed to rethink the way they need to design their machine, because the washing machine is now has now to be a service and no longer a product. And they have evolved within their design, not because of their internal leadership, but because of their association with small startups. So that could also be a way to move the bigger ship, the bigger boats that are those multinationals that have find it difficult, like you mentioned, the leaders find it difficult to change strategies now in post-COVID era. But that's associating your large company with a small startup is also a strategy to adopt. So not only you will change the design of your product, but like we mentioned earlier, it is a totally new relationship with your customer, because with the example of Bundle, the washing machine as a service, but now they do coffee machines and they do all kinds of machine as a service. I mean, your customer, you are in direct interaction with your customers every day, so it's no longer a one-off sell, but a longer commitment. And this is really a different economy. And it's also typically your photocopier model that has been in existence for decades, or now more and more the rental of office furniture or heavy medical equipment in hospital, because they are too costly. So it no longer makes sense to own them, but to access them. So again, it's an economy that makes a lot of sense, circular economy.
Yeah, it's and I think that piece around the kind of, that's a relatively easy step to take like you say, to kind of to align and to partner with those kind of offering circular solutions. And it's something we're at BITC looking to do more systematically over the coming years, is look at how we better connect the members that we work with solutions out there that can help them to kind of make those first steps forward. And if anyone listening is interested we have a directory of circular solutions that we can share with you, mainly related to kind of the office space, but we will be diversifying that going forward. So do get in touch if you're interested in a copy of that. The thinking about and going back to some of the ideas that you mentioned right at the start of the introduction, you've talked about quite a lot in your work about the need to kind of better make the links between the needs and beliefs of humans and the way that we need to redesign our economies to achieve sustainability. And you call that the circular human sphere. What's the thinking about, again, that this kind of mindset shift we need to go through? What would you say is the mindset leaders should be adopting and trying to embrace as they face into the current challenge?
Well, as always, the greatest complexity of these new business models and entering into a new economic revolution lies in human behaviors and advanced leadership. I mean, when you ask me the question about leaders find it hard to change now, potentially because they still think alongside the rules of linear economy, and they have not shifted yet within the rules of circular economy. And this is where the complexity is, and you need to unlock that complexity, and only humans can unlock that such complexity. That's why if you create your next economic model without thinking how do you move humanity and all these people into that new paradigm shift, you might not be successful, or you might be successful just in the VIP layers of people like you and me who seems to know or to understand what we're talking about. But the rest, what about the rest of the world? And so that's why I thought it would be much more interesting to embed that what I call the circular human sphere, because it integrates the missing social dimensions to me. I mean, and I'm not talking about socialism. I'm talking about a new dimension within a new economic model, and also the question of success. I mean. Would leaders of tomorrow be measured in terms of economic growth in quantitative terms, or would they be measured in terms of qualitative terms, as in I have improved the life and the livelihood of not only my customers but the citizens around them, around my organization, be it a for-profit or non-for-profit one. So to me, this missing social dimension and this notion of success, what is the success of the people tomorrow? Is it to acquire as much wealth as possible, or is it about ensuring the systems are being stable and far more resilient than they are today? And these two components are essential in the next economy. If you want to make the next economy appealing, these are critical topics. So we need to make sure that we truly achieve a model of doing more with less, and that will only work if we understand and respond to people's needs. So if we truly engage in a model of deep collaboration and with this leadership and this success measured from a qualitative standpoint. So to me, it's really critical to understand that before we jump into a new economy, because that economy shouldn't be just technical with strategies and business model as if we were only users and consumers of goods and services. We are more than that, and we need to understand. I understand it's more complex, but we shouldn't make any more mistakes. We don't have time for mistakes anymore.
Just sort of as we kind of come towards the end of the podcast, just thinking about measures of success, and it's one of the things that we've identified in our the kind of the first call to action, I suppose, in our time to fix up report, is to have another look at and revisit how we define success and what we look to measure as we emerge from COVID-19. And could you just go into a little bit more detail around what you see as the measures of success businesses should be really looking to embrace over the next few years?
Well, I've mentioned it already that we need to revisit that notion of success from a quantitative approach, selling more stuff in a throughput economy and the belief in endless economic growth, into this more like lateral, flattened approach where you are measured against qualitative indicators and outcomes. I mean, too often we measure ourselves against output and not against outcomes. So I have produced that many products and I have sold those products out of the store in no time, instead of saying, have my product changed, improved the life of the people, of my customers for good or for the better. And this is a very different approach. But anyway, in terms of success, we can look at these three dimensions that we often talk about: the environmental, the economic, and the social, but not in the siloed approach from the John Elkington thinking, but more like intricated, interrelated, interconnected, like you cannot split them anymore. And if some of these dimensions are not being reached, you might still be great leader, great managers, but not necessarily more than that. But in terms of economic success, it's about the absolute decoupling, not the relative, absolute decoupling of the resources requirements from economic needs. From an environmental success, it's about knowing whether I have contributed as one company, again, in a communities of companies, in an interrelated societies and communities in specific geographies, whether I have contributed to the betterness of biodiversity, because biodiversity is really key, or whether my company has seen a drop in the indirect carbon footprint that the company has created. I mean, we really need to decouple all of that. And the last part, which is the social success, would be about whether I have provided a wide enough range of flexible services to meet the needs of the people. Remember that in a product-based economy, you are very limited to, if you have to buy that computer, it is this price tag and there is no discussion. In a service-based economy, you can access IT services or online services in different ways, and the service-based economies are far more flexible, addressing the needs of the people. So where have I addressed the needs of all customer range, from the one who can have deep pockets to the ones that have difficulties to put hands meets? And if I have somehow with my different services, then I'm successful, and then I am a leader ready to jump in the economy of tomorrow.
Perfect. That's really interesting to think about, and I certainly feel like that move away from the notion of just our singular kind of carbon target or our single kind of biodiversity net gain target, that towards that more kind of integrated approach, I think is something that people are still grappling with and haven't quite shifted towards yet, but I think we're slowly starting to see some shoots there.
If you, sorry to cut you off, but if you think about, I need to drop my carbon emissions as an output, you might have difficulties to succeed. If you think about where do I want to be in by 2030, and as an outcome, and say, okay, I want to to be a pharmaceutical company that provides access to medicine to any kind of patient in a proper way to ensure the betterness of their health. And I will prevent illness instead of waiting for illness to occur and then provide very expensive medicine. Therefore, you will see drops of negative externalities and the net positive effect of this new positioning, this new value proposition of your company, and therefore your carbon footprinting will drop. If you just focus on carbon emission as an outcome, okay, I need to do the same business, but I with less carbon, you will fight against all odds, I'm afraid.
Really, really good way of articulating it, and just very, very nicely, nice way of kind of encapsulating a lot of what we've talked about today, and really kind of emphasizing that mindset shift point. And that really brings us to the end of the conversation. It's been wonderful talking to you, Alexandre. And just as a final thought for people, those that have made it this far, what would you see are the greatest causes for hope and optimism that we have at this moment?
Well, on hope, the ongoing lessons that we receive from living systems. I'm still very much amazed every day about the innovations that we see from the understanding of living systems, and on optimism, experiencing more human humbleness and ingenuity every day. I mean, again, in the face of scarcity, in the face of tensions, we are more and more ingenious, and there's more and more ingenuity around, and this is the great news here.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think it's always important to end on a high note and something positive. A lot of what we're grappling with at the moment is it can feel overwhelming, and can, we can potentially close down from it. So I think the more we look for hope and optimism, the better, really. And Alex, it's been really, really wonderful speaking
Thanks
to
for
you.
having
Thank
me,
you so
Peter.
much for the time you've given us. If people are interested in finding more about your work and the work that you do, where should they go?
Well, they can look for video related to the circular human sphere, or using the hashtag CIRC human sphere. This is where I post most of the articles and debates around why do we need to remember that there are humans behind the customers that we are that we are identifying, and also why we just a new economic system and model might not be enough. We need to think as an ecosystem model of life, and this is obviously far more complex, but this is where we need to go. This is the direction.
Perfect. That's brilliant. Thank you, Alex, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thanks, Peter. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.